My name is Michaela. This week we decided to watch Night of the Living Dead. It is one of my favorite films just because it really shows how much you can do with practically nothing. This film basically made its own genre during a time that horror was considered a kiddie genre. So I think it's a very important film that still resonates very strongly today. Today we're going to be talking with JP, Steve, Jason, and Dino. So, what's everyone's initial thoughts on this, everybody?
Well, so I hadn't watched this movie before, actually, believe it or not. And so it was my first time watching, and I really enjoyed it. Especially coming out in 1968, you just really see how it shaped, a genre. Like everything that's come since then has kind of taken things from it. I mean, it's like the first time, I was even just kind of joking. The first time that news is about to come on the radio and then they decide to turn it off, in the car and like stuff like that, that kind of have become tropes in every single movie where it's like, no, the information was right there. Also, I was really impressed that the main guy, like the hero, was a black guy, back in 1968. Because I saw him and I was like, oh wait, the black guy doesn't die first in a horror movie? That's weird. So yeah, I really like that Ben, I think is his character name, and I just thought it was really good. And even thinking about it, I see some similarities, with Get Out and stuff like that. Of just like it's not just a horror movie about zombies. That phrase wasn't even coined then, but there's a lot of like civil rights kind of issues because it was also 1968. So there's a whole nother level that Romero was kind of able to put in there that I thought was great. So initial thoughts, I was like, wow, this is for 1968. This is awesome.
Yeah. It's sad because, it was 1 year away from being nice.
I don't know what kind of nice would be in 1969.
I'm immature.
Yes, you are.
Okay, so my initial thoughts. It's funny because ever since college, that was the first time when I saw the movie, and it's one of Michaela's favorites. So it's like it's now kind of more of a tradition to at least see it once a year. So this is like I want to say the fourth or fifth time watching it, but like I'm not a fan of horror event in any sorts. But like this film, again, like I think with the other, much like with Pan's Labyrinth, I don't see it as a horror movie. I actually see it more like a survival movie, almost more of a thriller than an actual horror. And it's crazy because I do agree, like even if you did not know that this was basically what started, the zombie genre in cinema and just in general, it's so funny, seeing the tropes of it all, but it works. It just really works with the movie, and the movie is very smooth. It does make you think several times, and there's no real antagonist. There is no real hero in the movie. We do have a protagonist and our lead, but you can't necessarily call him a hero because he does have his faults. But in these sort of movies, you kind of place yourself thinking well, what would I would have done in that scenario, in that situation? And the movie itself actually asks itself, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What? And it's just a really good film, as a whole. It's funny because I think even someone like myself who's not into horror and stuff, I always call horror as hokey and stupid and whatever. But this was far from that, which is funny because it's one of the first movies to start this thing. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Fourth, fifth time watching it, I still learned something new. I still see something new. And it was a great movie. I liked it. Big deal.
All right, Steve, what did you think?
You're muted.
I can't hear you, Steve.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So my initial thoughts of this film. So everybody's been talking all nice and stuff about this film, saying how beautiful and great this is. I gotta say that the first quarter can't say the first half really, but first quarter of this movie, I was just like, what the hell is this? Because at first I was trying to figure out the relationship between the girl and the initial guy, because I thought they were a couple at first. That's where my brain went. But then later I found out, oh, that was her brother. Oh, right. If that was established more in the beginning, it would have made slightly more sense in certain parts. But still, I was just completely flabbergasted by this woman's acting, because it was, I mean, if this is what the director wanted, cool, awesome. But it was atrocious. Just like the amount of indicating she was doing and like all this and all that. But then once this black hero character gets introduced, the movie starts getting a little bit more intriguing. And I would say like second, fourth forward of the movie, that's really when the movie really kicks in and it gets really interesting for me. But if I were to watch, let's say the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie, and I just had that, I would be like, I'm walking out of this movie. Like legit, like I wouldn't have finished it. Because there's been films like that literally it did like the first 10 to 15 minutes, I'm like, this is just a waste of time. I don't know what's going on or whatever. Also, I mean, I have so much to say about this film. Ladies and gentlemen, we definitely got to hand it down to them extras, because they probably didn't have even a sense of direction. They were just like, hey, can you just like attack these people or whatever and just don't get burned. Try not to get burned. That's what I
say that because this film was so low budget that most of the people who were involved were actually like producers and like just like people from the neighborhood. Like someone's aunt was one of the zombies. Like they literally told the guys who were like lighting up, who like got lit on fire, who was willing to do that, if you start feeling hot, lay down on the ground. Like this is how low budget this film was. So you're not wrong.
When I saw that person getting burned, I was just like, oh, this is legit. Like this person is getting burned, and there's no protocol. There's no safety protocol for this.
Nope, there wasn't.
So that's why they were like afraid of fire, because it was just the actors like, yeah, yeah, you touch fire, you're gonna get burned. It's like, so we're afraid of fire? Yeah, we're afraid of fire.
Also, they're humans and they're afraid of fire. He was throwing fire at them. The whole movie is throwing fire at them.
Anyway,
people, that's a crazy thing to know about that. I didn't know that.
What were your initial thoughts, I guess, since you just said it was one of your favorite movies? But...
Yeah. So I discovered this movie when I was a kid, and I think it came on like cable one night, and I was pretty young, and so I didn't have like a huge attention span, but I was like, oh, this seems scary. It's black and white. So like, I don't think I had ever even seen a black and white horror movie before. And it came on, and it just, the way it started off wasn't like movies that are in black and white. It was very, for me as a kid, it was just like, there's something very like well paced about this movie. And it's the music. Like it starts off with great music, the car coming down the road. But then there's the actor in the very beginning, Johnny, who dies. That dude is a super dope actor. Like, they're coming to get you, Barbara. They're coming to get you. When I heard that as a kid, I was like, oh, I'm locked. Who's coming to get her? And then immediately after that, old man starts attacking her. And when I was watching it this time, for the first time I thought, is that guy even really a zombie? Or is that just a dude attacking her? We're assuming it's a zombie, but as an audience member, if I'm watching it for the first time, we don't know what zombies are. So it's like, that's just a dude attacking her.
Yeah. So
the story would unfold with them, but he painted this universe around zombies that there are certain rules to them. The rules have expanded since, but he created like zombies. And how many stories and movies and books have we read that are zombie related? Like even like in the past few years, zombies have had like a resurgence. Mm-hmm. And that's because this guy invented it with this movie, and the storytelling is so like sharp, because it's like, it's, you know what, this movie is like the Get Out of its day, because there's a huge social political message in this movie if you're paying attention. Jordan Peele was able to like replicate that in like 2018 or 17 or whatever that movie, 16, whenever that movie came out. But this was kind of like the first horror movie that really like dwelled into like trying to massage the social conscience of America. This movie came out during the height of the civil rights movement. People were being assassinated on the streets. Black Panthers and Martin Luther King, and this movie came out like we're gonna make a black guy the lead, and George Romero purposely chose a black guy as his lead. Like that was in the script. Like he had to be black. And it's amazing that he's the only one that gets out. If everybody would have just like listened to him, they would have been in a much better place. So clearly he just like, I'm going to try to help protect as many people as possible. And then he gets killed.
Well, bringing that up, like, how does everyone feel about the ending? That's like probably one of the most polarizing things about this film is literally within the last 2 minutes. Like, not only does he die, but did you guys actually watch the end credit sequences? Because like that's actually a big part of the storytelling, like the whole snapshots. So I want to open that to the floor and hear what everyone thought about that ending.
I was feeling that I was coming, I was just like, oh no. I was just like dreading it. I was like, no, don't peek out the window. Like, yell, say help, just yell. Maybe they'll hear you. Like, don't just peek. Oh man, and that chief. Oh man, who was that guy? Like it just, it was very stressful ending. And just with Get Out, just to connect the dots, I guess, Get Out had an alternate ending, which was similar to what that movie, Night of the Living Dead, was. It was basically the same. And in the original Get Out, like, he doesn't make it. Like, it's an actual cop that pulls up. So, spoiler for Get Out. But Jordan Peele was like, yeah, audiences just like really didn't, just didn't react well. And we were kind of like, we have to create some sort of hope, something like that, right? So it's like in 2016, I was like, maybe we can give a glimpse of hope in new movies. But in like 68, it was like, you try to do the right thing, you try to lead. I mean, and just like, what was it? What, Charlie? No. Charles, who was the dad in it that kept not helping?
Oh, Harry.
Huh?
Harry.
And then like tries to like steal the gun. Like, come on, man! Like, and again, right? Like we're thinking, like, man, those are some slow zombies. But you know what? Yeah, I was seeing it coming.
You're used to the fast zombies.
Yeah. Well, now we are, but just like, oh my god. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get too forward or distracted, but I was kind of as the movie progressed, and I was like, oh, he's still alive. Oh, okay. Like, all right, yeah, I believe in you. And then when I see them going towards the house, and like they have those dogs. And I'm just like, are those dogs barking because they're barking at zombies or because they smell a black person?
Jesus
and
Christ.
That's what came to my mind. It's
a big part of American iconography of the time. Like during that time, that was like something that they newscast was the policemen and the dogs going after rioters.
Yeah, and the fireman water. So that's what I was anyway. So yeah, I felt horrible that I was like the one guy. I don't know. JP might have said that he had his faults. I didn't see any fault. I thought he was trying to be a leader, and they're dumb asses that were only thinking about themselves. Whereas he was trying to Bernie Sanders it, and they were all being a bunch of doofuses.
Well, I think what he's saying with that is like he wasn't like a typical hero of that time because like during the early 60s and early 50s when there was a male hero, like he never raised his voice. He was always calm and collected and squeaky clean. Where, especially when it came to like the like Sidney Poitier like roles, like they really made sure he was like spit and polished and all of that. Whereas with Ben's character, like he raises his voice. He actually hits a white woman in this film, which was like a very risky thing to do.
Preposterous at that time. Like white men watching that movie in the South they probably went ape shit when they saw that. Preposterous to them.
Bro,
They probably attacked the screen thinking like it was a person, right?
Yeah, but like it wasn't like a clear cut like I'm like here to save the day and don't worry about that, Darla. Like he was afraid and like he didn't have all the answers. So I think that they made a very, very like he was just an average American man dealing with this impossible situation. It's very interesting that you brought like the thing about the ending was like when Romero tried to sell it, that was actually a big part of why they couldn't get it distributed right away was a lot of people hated the ending, but he stuck with it because he felt like it was very important to portray. Yeah. So I think that because he stuck with his guns with that, like that's why this movie stays so relevant throughout the ages. So what were your thoughts, JP?
I mean, same. Like I hate the ending, but I know narrative wise, you can't change it. Like it would have been great if Ben did survive all that shit, like and well deserved survive it. But like, I feel like the movie is actually better for no one being able to live through it. I thought the new thing that I picked up on this viewing though was when the sheriff and the basically the other fellas, I don't know what the fuck to call them. The liberators or what are the shit?
National Guard.
It's basically just the sheriff and a ragtag team of guys that have fucking guns. Mm-hmm. Like when they were when the montage of them shooting all the zombies, there was a few of them where I actually could not tell if it was a ghoul or not. They shot two people in the back. We don't see how they look like from the front, and I'm like, they could be two tired ass people trying to walk away from a situation, and they just freaking shot him in the back. Like in that moment, like this time around, I was like, whoa, like they're literally just shooting whoever they see that's not them, like without any warning. And it sucks because you see that when these creatures, the ghouls as they call them, when they're unprovoked, they're quiet. They don't talk, they don't make any noise. And that's a thing that I was like, well, they're not talking, they're not making noise, and they just fucking shoot them. And a few of them, I can't even tell myself, like, is that a fucking zombie or is it not? And so
that was more an audio thing, right? Of filming outside and low budget. That it's just like
maybe, but like I just
no sound zombie, just.
I just couldn't help but think like, did some of those other people that they shot were they also just normal ass people like just walking about like because like it's. The night prior was a long fucking night. And if they survive through like a lot of bullshit, they'll walk tiredly and staggering, with the weight of whatever the fuck happened the night before on them, right? Mm-hmm. So I couldn't help but think it's like, who else wasn't a fucking zombie? And it sucks because like, in the ending credits, like Michaela said, like you can actually see like stills of what happened after him. And like they're picking him up with meat hooks as not to touch him and get contaminated. And, like, it's him with, they're treating Ben as like, oh, he was a fucking monster, but he never got to that point. Like, he actually was one of the few people who never became that. And they're treating him as if he was. And Mikhail actually saw this when we saw it this time around, when they put him into the fire in the pit, in the little thing, I don't know what you call it, the fire pit, the bonfire. They actually they lay him next to the guy in the beginning, the old zombie. Like it's the zombie, the first one that we saw, literally the first zombie character, and he's laid next to him. And I don't know if that was on purpose. It probably was, but I couldn't help but think like, oh man, like these fucking people, they see him as that, but he never was that. And that fucking blows.
Well, what did you think, Steve, of the ending?
Of the ending.
You walked out.
What?
We can't hear you.
What? No.
Can't hear you.
Just trying to hear you is all.
You look cool, but we can't hear you.
Not a word. Not a sound.
How about now?
A little bit. Getting better.
A little better.
Now getting better.
You're
getting better.
Not very loud on our end.
Yeah.
How about now?
Less better.
Less.
Yeah.
How about now? How
A little
hello?
bit.
Hello. 1 2
There we
1 2.
There we go. There we go.
Yo, you hear me? I said
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. A little staticky now.
a little staticky.
Okay. There we go. Stop playing with it.
What she said.
Oh my god.
Man, this is terrible.
I guess you can't hear me at all.
Getting embarrassing.
Yeah.
Skip me.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, then I guess the next question is.
Oh,
is
well, we didn't hear Jason's.
oh, yeah,
Um,
so sorry,
Cool.
Jason. Go ahead.
So the photos at the end are what gets me every time. Like the fact that they keep the sound effects going, but then those photos, because it just reminds you, like in American psyche, the image of the dead black man, right? And it's like everything else around is basically an undead person. So it's sort of like they're not even human. But then he's mixed in there, like you said, with all these non-humans. And it's like psychologically, it's like, whoa, like that's what he is to them anyways. He's just a dead black body. And I remember the first time I saw the movie, I thought they were going to kill him on purpose. And I was always shocked to see him not come out of the house. It was an accident.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's something inside you that sort of makes you think, but was it an accident? Was it? I mean, he said, look at that in the window. But I mean, maybe I would have shot it too. Fucking, there's dead things walking around. We don't want to take a chance with these things. You know what I mean?
Although they're pretty darn slow.
They are.
You should be able like, can you speak? Yes.
Yeah, there should have been a protocol. It was real bad protocol.
Have you been
That
bitten?
they keep telling
No.
people is
I
to
don't think they
stay
did
at the
that.
house.
They didn't know stuff. They said they cut all the limbs off of a dead person and he came back to life.
But you know what?
That is
All
true.
the doors
It
and windows
did
were broken out of the
Fucking in
place too.
shambles.
Well, and it's always like one of those situations where I think that that's what Romero does so well in his work in general is he's very good at showing you these situations where like as much as we'd like to think that we would be better, like we wouldn't, because like you said, there's tons of dead people just crawling around. But on the other hand, one thing that like we recently watched a documentary about how he made this film and stuff, and he kind of made the gangs of men who are like sweeping the countryside. He said that he kind of made them look like lynch mobs on purpose.
Yeah.
So that also kind of makes you wonder, like, did they actually care, or did they kind of notice something moving and just shoot first? And
I called them the Proud Boys.
He did.
Yeah, that's what
The
they
first
look
time I saw them, I was automatically like, yeah, because they weren't the National Guard.
like.
And I mean,
Guys
they
with
called
guns.
him chief, and he's just dressed in regular, civilian clothing.
Mhm.
And it's like, you're given license to kill. Go and kill these things.
Yeah.
All right.
It was their purge. It was their purge.
Okay, so I think my next question
Still
is
can't
like,
hear you, Steve.
Oh wait, we still have to wait for us.
Steve, are you alive?
Has he been hypnotized?
Nope.
can't hear you.
Nah.
Nope.
Just turn up your volume.
Yeah. Man, Puerto
Just
Rico.
Steve, just use the volume switch and press up.
Oh my god, stop.
Start writing things on piece of paper and send it up to the camera, but make sure it's inverted, because it's going to be a mirror image, so you want to write from left to right.
All right, maybe just ask the next question.
Yeah.
We'll just move on to the next question.
Yeah, I think we should keep going.
Okay.
Yeah. Thumbs up if you. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Right. All right. Go ahead. Move on.
So I think what George Romero does so well in his films is he uses a lot of different forms of media to give us the exposition as to like what's going on in the world around us and like how almost unreliable this is because everyone's panicking. Do you think that was like a very like realistically, if this was happening now, and like obviously it would have been phones and stuff, but do you think
Cellular towers or like whatever, however we get our information will go down.
Mhm.
Like in the movie, it was the power outage.
Right.
As soon as the power's gone, it's out. But if a movie today would show like, oh well, the cellular towers are gone, or like wherever we get our information, like TV stations or news stations, they're gone. So that's how I feel like that would have happened. So, but I'm sure like, yeah, we almost the same way, and how they even them interviewing the politicians Like that's so like if anything, it'd be a lot faster today
Mm-hmm.
because you'll have politicians either tweeting about it or news today are so like obsessed with being the first one to be on the story that like it would almost come immediately after like we just heard word from X station or X affiliate that they finally got to somebody or whatever, like asking these fucking questions and then them denying it on Twitter or some shit like that. So yeah, I feel like it'd be a lot similar, but it would just be a different form. Like how theirs was TV and radios, today's movie would have been Facebook, Twitter, everything online.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, we lost Steve. I just started recording also. So just bring up the question about the media thing, just to make sure that we got it recorded.
Oh,
Yeah, definitely. So the question I asked was, George.
Hold on. Because they're gonna edit this one with.
I don't know if it's gonna be edited, but just as it might just be spliced together. So
ask the question as if
Okay.
for the first time.
Okay, cool. So George Romero was really good at using media to give us the exposition, and this was made during a time where a lot of people considered that very reliable. I feel like the question is do you think that they showed a good portrayal of it? Was it an effective tool? And how do you think they would be using that same tool today?
I really enjoyed it. I thought that El Jefe is back on. I at first I thought it was a little like, I don't know if cheating, but very much it's low budget, so they hadn't, the dialogue wasn't really strong, story wise. So I was like, this is the way to put out exposition, right? But as the movie progressed, and once they moved over to the TV aspect from the radio to the TV, I really started to like it. I thought it was a very nice break from the chaos. You have the newscaster, with the glasses and all that. So the more as the movie progressed, I really enjoyed it more. The way that they use the TV and the reporters and stuff like that to kind of give new information, because then you would see the people in the house react to that. And you were talking about how it would be used now. Yeah, people are extremely stupid and won't even wear masks. And you have people on TV saying like, "Hey, you should wear a mask," as simple as that. And it was similar in the house. They're like, "Hey, they said we should do this, we should do that," and you have some people like, "Nah, I'm just gonna lock myself down." And Ben even talks about it like, you're thinking about yourself, like think about the others. Think like that's why this movie is great, because it still is literally things that are happening today of just like, if we can just stop about what's best for me for like 1 second, and try to maybe be like, what's best for Jason or what's best for all of us, like it would make a big difference. So like seeing that like in today's environment and all that, I'm just like, wow, not much has changed other than the special effects, right? But yeah, so I definitely, as the movie progressed, I thought the use of the media got better and better, and yeah, we're still there. We're not gonna do the right thing.
Yeah. Before we continue, did my response get recorded? Like we're good?
Yes, yours got recorded. If you want to redo it, you can.
No.
Okay. Jason, Steve?
Can we hear Steve?
Can we hear Steve? Nope, we can't hear Steve.
All right, I'll go ahead. Maybe Steve will fix his audio by the time I finish. The media was portrayed interestingly to me, because the more I watch this film, the more I realize like how everything is set up. Like there's no real accidents in the movie. If you notice, when they listen to the radio, the initial media reports were way far-fetched. They're like, it's something from outer space. Someone's saying that there was a Martian or whatever. And then a little bit later on the radio, one of the reports is, this is the first time I watched the movie with the subtitle captions, so I could really listen to the news report. And it's like, then they were talking about how it was definitely some radiation that came from space that turned people into these, that woke up the undead. And the stories kept like sort of developing. Then they were like, they thought it was like some type of infection or whatever. And the doctor was saying like, no, it's definitely radiation. And the two government officials couldn't agree on TV in the moment. And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely how things would go. Nobody would know anything, especially in the 60s. I could see it. Like, it felt like, yeah, nobody would know anything. There was no, like, there wasn't 10 news channels. You know what I mean? There's only so many journalists. There was like your local journalists, probably. You know what I mean?
Today would be like, oh, it's the 5G towers creating the
Yeah.
the ghouls.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, absolutely. People would go to that, but they wouldn't rule out anything, I would imagine. But that's what's so cool about the movie. You never find out what brought these zombies about.
Well,
and that's the scariest part.
They did say there was they had sent a satellite, like a rover, to Venus.
Yeah.
And on the way back, apparently there was something there, so NASA destroyed it before it arriving back. And so they're saying that was kind of what was left from that.
But didn't the government official say, I can't confirm that?
I don't remember, but that just could also
The
be
guy in the military uniform, like the U.S. Army.
Right.
Military can't confirm that.
But again, that's what kind of the government would say, like, oh, it's not our fault, right? I took it that way. I took it that the government guy was like, oh yeah, no, it's not us.
With the government response, how long would it take for them to send? Because remember they were like, we're going to send in the National Guard. Oh, what happened to
I know.
I have no idea. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear one of you. We can hear the black guy.
Yeah, man. My computer keeps crashing. But to give my thoughts on the final scene that I've been trying to talk about, that to me is very, the way I foreshadowed it was first the fact that his main plan was, let's buy time here in the house and someone is gonna rescue us and is gonna help us. And I was like, well, that's not quite the story, because you're in the 60s, you're a black guy, and you're with a white woman. And then later, when she smacks him and Chris Browns her, basically, I was like, now she has a bruise. If the cops see you, you're going to end up locked up or shot, because they're not going to believe you. They're going to believe this crazy lady. So that's the way that I kind of knew that was going to happen. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Did you guys end up answering the use of media also, both of you? I know JP did.
I didn't answer it myself, no. I think it was very interesting because I was going to point out the same things that Jason did, like how it kept growing, because actually the first big thing of reports, they didn't even mention anything about the dead. They just thought that these were mass murders just happening. Like people were just going insane and killing each other, But I think that's what makes these like apocalyptic films like so interesting, is it really does put you in the corner. And I think that like it would be a little bit different today, because I feel like the people have a different relationship with our news media than they did back in like the 70s or like early 60s, 70s, because during that time was like when they were like reporting everything about the Vietnam War, and they thought that this was a medium that was a lot more trustworthy because they weren't hiding the blood and stuff, even though they were editing a lot of that stuff. So I think that now that we're more aware, I think it would have changed that dynamic a little bit. So.
Also, one thing that I wanted to add, do you guys think, just a question based on the movie, but not directly related to the movie necessarily, but do you think the idea of, instead of burying people, let's start burning people? Because there's a massive, of course, there's a massive population problem. There's a lot of people. And maybe too many people were getting buried. So they were saying, hey, we let people, if we bury people, they might turn into zombies. So it's better if we burn them. And therefore, they take care of that little problem.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was about to get really excited because, like, when George Romero first came up with this concept, he never actually intended it to be considered zombies. They were just souls that were, like, overcrowded in hell. I think that with fire comes a lot more permanence. And, like, I think that that's part of it is, like, it's something that a lot of people religiously are very uncomfortable with. But, like, there's something about burning a body that just adds a level of, like, nothingness. And that's part of why he chose that method.
Gotcha. Now I'm gonna say like it kind of reminds me of in times of where mass death happens, in order to prevent disease, you have to bury the body. And I feel like in this situation, literally it's the body that's messing up everything. So I guess burning it as opposed to burying it was the way. Kind of like he kills diseases supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was assuming was the reason for burning the bodies in the movies. Is like, oh, we're approaching this as if it is a disease. The actual person is the disease, and what you kill diseases with heat, with fire. Then that's how I took it. I didn't think about that, but yeah, yours was interesting.
Well, he said that.
To jump on the fire thing, I didn't mention it yesterday when we were watching, but I did think it like when Ben lights the chair on fire and sets it, the first time he puts it out, I first thing that came to mind was like, oh, a burning cross, that this is used to, like, it's like the opposite, right? Usually, like, white supremacy or KKK would go and like light a cross on fire in the lawn, and this time the black guy's like, no, I'm lighting some shit on fire to keep you guys away. So I don't know, that came to mind when I was watching it yesterday. Just like, oh wow, like just they had really good imagery again, like for again.
Lots of great use of fire.
Yeah. Also, how stupid was a young kid where it's like, oh, I can take care of the truck and the pump. And then it's like,
He just fucked up both of them right away.
First thing he does is like, let me click the gas just on the fire.
He literally washed the truck with the fucking gasoline. I'm like, I don't drive. I thought that was fucking stupid.
I was like, I guess maybe that's where Zoolander got the idea
He
from.
panicked.
Like,
He panicked.
That's exactly what it is. It's like, that's what's so stressful about the scene is they're all like little mistakes that just like add up to like this horrible demise, up to even her being like, my jacket's caught. And you're just like, of course it is. Of course your dumb jacket's caught.
I don't know where you were gonna go, but before I don't know, no one seems to have brought it up. Is that the first time that a little girl is like horrible, like devil kind of thing, like before The Ring, before Annabelle, before all these movies where like a little girl, because as it goes, I'm like, oh, she, like we know just because of like all the modern films. But like in 1968, do you just think like, oh, she's, she just seems to be sick or whatever, and then they're like, well, what happened? Oh, so, one of those, things bit her, and I'm just like, we know all the rules, so I'm trying to figure out in 1968 was it just like, oh, that's disgusting, one of the crazy people bit her, but like I'm just like, no, like she's gonna turn into one. And then sure enough, she does. And boy, is she creepy. And, like, was that the first time is that the first time in film that we see, like, the use of a little kid as just,
A monster?
Yeah.
I would say that that's definitely the first time we see that relationship dynamic. That is like little kid about to gonna eat her mother, type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's what it is, Steve. It's the first time that they really exploit that dynamic, because it's almost heartbreaking the way that like the mom like kind of is like, no, like you can see it in her face where she's fighting with this duplicity of like wanting to love and like also needing to
Yeah.
bash this thing's brains in.
Not Old Yeller. If a fucking dog gets bit by another dog with rabies.
But they didn't know at this point. They didn't know that bites also like transmuted stuff. They just assumed if you died.
I would just cap your ass.
Love you too, hon.
Yeah, would you smash your kids' brains in?
Mm.
They're not smart.
I will definitely do it if my kid is ugly. I'm like, yo, I'm sorry, but I can try again and maybe.
And then blame it on zombies, right? Like, oh, it turned into a zombie. That's why I smashed the face in.
Yeah, and if another one comes out that looks the same or uglier, I'll be like, it's the mom. I gotta change the mom.
Oh god.
Oh gosh.
All right, so has anyone answered?
I think so. Yeah. Like
Okay, cool.
first time that in cinema, kid was creepy and kid just happened to eat its parents.
Well, I don't know for sure, but I think that's another thing that like was touched on was like the fact that it was like the first time they actually had a kid like so brutally
Yeah.
behaved.
Yeah, she it doesn't show her like bite the mom. She just kills her with a little tiny
Betrayal.
hook. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. She actually just kills the mom. She doesn't even like eat her. So
Well,
it's like the zombie rules aren't even totally established
Well, no,
yet.
she
She's
took-
using a tool to kill her mom.
Maybe because she was satisfied from chewing on the dad. Maybe she was like, I'm satisfied right now, but
I mean, she had a full arm.
Yeah.
An entire father's arm. All right, so I guess my last question is, what do you think was more, what created more suspense in the film? Like the broken dynamic of like our team, like how, like their team, or like the actual zombies coming in? Like, what do you think created more suspense?
Well, I think that's a great question, because you do have these two suspenseful motions happening in the movie at the same time. They're fighting this greater thing, but they can't even get it together as people. Like all those like conflicts that are happening kind of add so much tension onto the movie, brilliantly so. There's relationships within relationships, and then you forget that the monster, the one that's advertised on the damn poster of the movie, is in the house with them the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
You even know, and it's the littlest, most unsuspecting one. And she's the one that is all of their undoings ultimately, right? Well, at least somebody's undoing,
Kid.
Mm-hmm.
Did Romero also do the one in the mall?
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Dawn of the Dead.
So, and what I've noticed, with this one and I guess zombie movies in general, because usually like you lock yourself in a place, right? It's a great, and the fact that he did it first, that it's a great way to focus on society issues in the micro, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it just automatically, there's a status or whatever. Like at some point, Ben's like, I'm the one in charge now, like I'm the one, telling you what to do. Like there's clear, who has the gun, who has the power, who makes the rules type of thing. And then and then even in the mall, they're always dealing with that kind of race as an issue as well, if I remember correctly of that. And then there's someone that also got it bit, right, and was kind of sick and was needing help. And this idea of like trying to team up, right, at some point, like we got to figure out a way to get that gun from him, So I think it's a beautiful way of using horror to really create a microcosm of what our society deals with and the issues that we have. And that's, I think, the beauty of any type of entertainment, is that you can take fantasy, you can take fiction, and put it in our face as a way to entertain us, yet kind of give us an underlying message of like, hey, this was entertaining, but can I make you think about something else? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, hint, hint.
Yeah.
Being racist. I don't know.
Well, I think what's very interesting about this genre in general is I think it's one of the few genres that really touch on how bad humans are at teamwork in general. Like, it's the most real, like, it's one of the few genres that you can get away with, like, actually showing how ugly we are together when we're forced to work together.
Yeah.
You know, because, like, in other genres, when you have, like, the different people who could never get along, they eventually put their side, like, they put their differences aside and they kill the monster, they kill the dragon. Like, that's the stereotype that he subverted. You know, when in reality, that's not what happens at all.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's so many survival stories that you hear where, like, it's a group of people and everyone's like, well, Jerry decided to go left and Richard decided to go right and we just all were fucked. Like, so I think that, like, the fact that he wasn't willing to shy away from that, it makes the movie that much more suspenseful, because, like, you don't know what's actually going to get them in the end. Is it going to be the infighting? Are they going to tear each other to pieces before the zombies actually do?
Yeah.
Or are they actually going to succumb to the actual evil that they're going through?
I think, like, it's like it was funny because, like, I had to think about it for a moment. But I know, like, while watching it, it was them, like, not seeing eye to eye. And it sucks because, like, you can't have one without the other.
Mhm.
Like, the only reason why we're so worried about them not finally coming to agreement is because of the threat that's outside. It's like, yo, if you guys don't get your shit together, you guys are going to run out of time, and the fuckers outside, they're going to get you. And, yeah, and eventually it does at the end. Like, they're almost everyone's faults, and everyone's, like, at least trying to do their best to end the situation individually. Like, that Barbara girl, like, she stressed me out the entire movie. Like Ben had such incredible patience. I know he struck her. I mean, she struck him first. But, like, oh my God, it's like, I couldn't help but think, like, if I was put in that situation, I don't know what I would do. Because then I would be pretty selfish too. It's like, no, I can't deal with you. Like, go out there if you want. I have to survive on my own. And that's basically Harry's mentality. It's like, no, I have to survive for me, but also for my wife and kid. But it was mostly for himself, you know. Because even the wife was willing to go out with the girl, even though that was the main reasoning for his staying in the basement, was using the girls. Like, no, we have to stay in the basement because my daughter, you know. But yeah, it's crazy.
Is there a BuzzFeed quiz on, like, what character are you in Night of the Living Dead?
Oh, I'm
Right,
sure.
Are you Ben, or are you Charles, or yeah, the mom? For a second, I think everyone hates Barbara, right? And just but then again, it is like, what would you do? And I was worried that I was like, oh boy, there are not going to be any female characters that are actually strong or that don't pass is it the Belch test or the Belk?
Mm-hmm.
And the mom kind of did. At least, you know, like, she seemed to have the pants on in that relationship. Because then she's like, even though we're not, like, we don't like living with each other anymore, we kind of have to do this for the kid. So I was like, oh shit, that mom's kind of on it. Like, she's like, I'm doing this for the kid. And she's telling Charles the way it should be at times. And so then I thought maybe, like, she would have more of a chance. But, you know, the whole, like, it's my baby thing. I think she was like, I'd rather get killed by my baby than have to come to terms that my baby is a monster, which is what, you know, white parents sometimes deal with.
Even
I also,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
just one thing, because before we, like, wrap, because I know people are, like, in the wrapping phase, but, like, one thing I definitely want to touch about is about the whole thing about ownership. because one thing I don't think we discussed, or maybe you guys did while I was fixing stuff, but basically people that came into that house, none of them were owners of this house, and all of them felt like a sense of ownership now, like, yo, this is my fortress. I'm gonna protect everything from here, and basically I'm like the new owner of the house. Even in that part when the black dude, forgot the name, went out and came back and the guy didn't even want to open the door for him.
Yeah.
He's like, no, this is my house now. You stay outside, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a moment too, man. And like I think maybe sometimes we overlook that. I have focused on that element of the movie before. It is a bizarre thing, like their relationship and how much they're butting heads. Like that is a whole it's a power trip. And you can understand both perspectives of it, but you're right. Eventually it comes down to like these are the amount of resources that are around, and I'm going to utilize all of them to take care of as many people as I can. The difference is that Harry was like just not a good guy, because ultimately we find out that Harry only cares about Harry. But then you have the lead of the movie, which makes him the lead, I suppose, is that he's like, I'm trying to take care of everybody. I'm putting myself on the line for everybody. If I wanted to, I could just get out of here.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to protect the group.
It's like Bernie Sanders and Trump, right? One is like, I want everyone to have health care. And then you got Trump, aka Harry, who doesn't even care about his family, but uses them as an excuse to just like, I want to survive.
He did all that to save Harry's ass while Harry waited in the house.
Yeah.
And when he came back, Harry didn't have the audacity to let him back in that bitch. That's who Harry was.
But that was the audacity right there.
He was hiding in his fucking bunker while the rest of the nation was on fire. Own up, Harry!
They had to get Harry, he had to convince Harry to hang out the window and throw fire bombs at the zombies. Like, that was hard for Harry. Harry didn't want to do that shit.
If you told me I could throw Molotov bombs, I would be throwing Molotov cocktails like
to save your own ass.
Oh my! I love fire, right? I just my love of fire because we live in Southern California, and that's just not cool. But boy, do I like starting fires. So like, if you, oh my god, like growing up, like I was just like, can I find a bottle with some sort of burning alcohol and just fucking chuck it?
Yeah.
Like I would do that. Like, oh yeah, that's why when then the fire started and it was like at the pump and they go and they blow up, I'm like, hey man, just get the gas pump, get your torch and just start lighting everything on fire, man. Light that barn on fire. Just, like make them not want to catch on fire because there is no insurance for the movie.
I like that you told us about them just lighting actors on fire with like no protocol. Like in my head, like there has to at least have been an extinguisher around on set, right? Like something.
Like I'm sure, but like I never realized, like I said, JP and I, right after we watched this, we found a documentary about how this film was made. Oh, nice. And I didn't realize like how homegrown, like from nothing, like they had to win a chess match to get the sound mix. Like that's how they got the sound mix, was one of the producers won a chess match against the company because they didn't have money to do it. And since he won, they agreed to do the sound.
And also, like, it's funny because, like, I know that you said that, and it's true that both people that they happen to know or people that were past clients of, like, their previous work were zombies. Some of the cast, like, actors that we saw on screen, they also doubled as zombies.
Wow.
Yeah.
The mom doubled as a zombie. A few of the newscasters doubled as zombies. I think also the sheriff doubled as a zombie.
He did.
Like, it's...
Yeah, like the zombie that eats the bug, that's the mom.
Nice.
I love that.
You know,
so
like...
that's why the sound mixing also, we just heard a whole lot of crickets. it's like, I can't believe I lost chess match. Like, I guess there's silence here, add some crickets.
I love how they use the crickets in this movie.
I do too.
Right. Like the first time we hear the crickets is when Beverly is like starting to like have a breakdown.
Barbara.
When Barbara's having her breakdown, every time Barbara's on the screen, all you hear is crickets, and then we'll cut back to Ben, and he'd be like fixing something, no crickets. Barbara, crickets, and I'm like, oh, like they're trying to say there's nothing left. She's checked out, dog. She's gone. Crickets, like someone who got knocked out, like birds.
Oh,
Yeah.
and this is another thing that you just reminded me of, because Barbara is the name of the lady, right, in the beginning.
Yeah.
So the part where the black dude is like trying to get her to like speak and like say something and help him, and then later when she actually opens her mouth, it's all about the trauma, and he's just like, just shut up, just please shut up.
I that your brother's dead and you're convinced he's alive. Like he didn't want to deal with it.
I mean, there's definitely some editing issues with that. For instance, we didn't know that his name was Ben until the mom.
Did. I did.
Well, you've seen the movie.
I feel like
They don't know. No. The first time is because someone comments about it, and then the same thing. The mom tells Harry like, "Oh, his brother died," and I'm like, "How do you find out? You've been down in the basement this whole time, and you've not spoken to anyone, and just dropped."
The hunky guy told her.
Oh yeah, no.
Like when the mom first comes up from the basement, like she sees Barbara like fingering a doily, and she's just like, "What's this person's deal?" And he's like, "Her brother died." That was her introduction to Barbara.
I think maybe you're right. I think you're right. I thought there was too.
But I mean, anyway, some of that is just editing, right? Like we'll just put this information out there.
Well, I mean, and you also have to give the man credit because George Romero was the director of photography, the actual director, the editor for this, and this was his first film too. Like and everything he'd done before this was like really bad beer commercials.
Yeah.
So but the one thing he didn't do and didn't stick to was being a fucking zombie.
But he was a newscaster though. He was in there.
Yeah, but he.
Oh really? Nice.
Is it the thing that we saw? He was like, "I'm not gonna eat that cow liver shit. I'm not gonna do that."
Like that was actually a real liver, all the meat and stuff.
Yeah,
that was like
I can believe it. I was like, "Oh, there's a liver."
I'd like to ask you guys a question before we close out. I'd like to ask you guys, did you find this movie scary like today? Is this a scary movie?
I think it is. You know, like I think that he's really good at building up the tension, especially once they get into the thick of it. I don't know if I would say it's like a traditional scary where you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to jump out of my skin." But I think that like watching it, like it does give you a sense of anxiety. You know, like I like watched this movie so many times, but I still feel it. Like I still get stressed out every time they like come up with a plan or every time Harry decides to go for the gun.
What about when they find that woman in the upstairs and her face has been eaten off?
Yeah,
that was fucking gross.
That was such a great reveal.
And they came back to that shot a couple times, and it looks really good.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that looks like maybe somebody got their face eaten off. Like the makeup is, with the design, whatever, it looks amazing.
The prop guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy because, like, I think after watching the movie so many repeat watchings, like, I can't say yes, it's still scary, but like the one thing that still kind of gets me is literally the end. Yeah. And that's when, not the end, but with when almost half the cast is just gone. When Ben is trying so hard to hold the door, when Barbara and the wife. The wife's stuck on the door because there's zombies at her, and as soon as Barbara frees her, fucking Johnny like comes out of nowhere. Like you see the leather glove, and you're like, "Oh shit, that's just like Johnny's glove." And I was like, "Oh no, it's Johnny, Johnny!" And
here comes Johnny.
Oh right? Man, that was so good. Isn't it crazy how Johnny bookends the movie? For the Barbara.
Yeah.
Like he starts the movie Barbara, and then he comes back to get Barbara at the end. You know what I mean? Like, it's like
Mhm.
all she's looking for the whole time is Johnny. Where's Johnny? We gotta go find Johnny. Even after she's like, yeah, because Johnny, I can find. Remember when they told her to go in the basement? She goes, yeah, because that is the best idea to go back and get Johnny or whatever she said. It was always Johnny. Johnny found her ass at the end.
He did.
That's an amazing bookend. You're right.
What's that one thing that Glenn says in Walking Dead? I'll find you. I
I don't know. It's been so long since I've seen that.
It's just the storytelling of this movie, like you said, to write it. I mean, honestly, this is such an auteur movie because he probably visualized all this shit like in the writing process. You know, discovered a little as he was making it. I mean, filming it, and then discovered even a little bit more as he was editing it. Because there's so much like detail and relationships, and the weird thing is, like, I don't think he ever made another movie as great as this.
I don't know. Like, I feel like after this, like, he kept playing on the same themes and building like more of the world.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what became his focus. Like, not so much about like how these people. But then again, have you seen we all die another to die another day?
To Die Another Day. I don't think I've seen that one.
The James Bond movie?
No, it's actually another Romero. Like, I think I might be getting the title wrong, but it's like the third one he wrote, and like it's like supposed to happen like a couple years after the zombie apocalypse happens, and they're actually collecting zombies to study them, and they find that they're slowly becoming like cognizant.
I never seen the film in its entirety, but I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
They have a weird puppet, half alive, half zombie.
Yeah,
like, just,
and like they actually make it like he's always playing with different themes in the movies. You know, like each one has a different aspect that he's focusing on. And as I don't think that any other of his films have been as influential, I do think that this was something that he made into his life's work, and he created an entire world for us to explore and see the worst and best of us. With flesh eating and mingling.
And that kind of has to be what the zombie is in a zombie movie. Like, zombie is like one of the greatest monsters ever created. We've used it so many times, you know, as humans. And there's always a different take on it. And you're right. It's also because when the whole world flips upside down and half the people become monsters, what are you going to do? What are you going to become? Are you going to be consumed by it? Are you going to rise to the occasion? Are you going to survive? Like, what becomes of your moral? Because it's every zombie movie also has like a moral center. Like, and it's like you said, as humans, who do we become? So that's actually a really good take on zombie movies. I think if you want to see a great zombie movie, it probably has to have that element, which I think most of them sort of do. You know, even with some of the more recent zombie movies that, what was the one with Will Smith and then the Brad Pitt one?
I Am Legend and World War Z.
And World War Z, like those are two movies, you know, big budget action zombie movies, and they both have moral centers. And you're right, that's the whole universe that Romero made for us to continue to explore, which is really quite an achievement, quite a contribution to humanity if you think about it.
Is it
Yes, it is. It's Richard Matheson wrote it. He's the guy who did Twilight Zone.
Okay, because I was about to say, like, I Am Legend, since Romero did kind of base the zombies kind of like what
loosely
he heard
off of this
from
this
I Am
novel.
Legend. So it's like, okay, so I Am like zombies is almost entirely from a modern view. Like, not only is it mostly cinema origin, but it's also an American thing. Like, because vampires and Frankenstein, they're English, aren't they?
Yeah, gothic, very gothic monsters.
Well, I Am Legend is also a reboot from the Omega Man with, I believe, Charleston Heston or something was in there's like 3 or 4 different I Am Legend, Omega Man, the Omega Man, something like that.
I Am Legend started off as a novel written by the guy who did a lot of the Twilight, like the classic scary Twilight Zone. Like, he did 200,000 Terror at 200,000 feet. Like
Shatner.
Yeah, no, but like this guy, if you really like to read horror, I would highly suggest all of his short stories. Like, this man really did influence the way America, like, culturally, like, looks at horror. and like the fact that he had some hand in Romero's inspiration is quite telling.
Oh wow.
But like,
I said that's dope.
yeah. But like JP said, like I think that that's what makes the zombies so special is Romero managed to create something without a pedigree, really.
Yeah.
Like he created something separate. Because like vampires, werewolves, all that, like there's so many like legends and lore that go back hundreds and hundreds of years. Whereas zombies, or at least in the sense that we're talking about, is pretty postmodern.
Yeah.
Like yes, there was like the Haitian thing, but like the way that those zombies are treated compared to these ones are so different that you can't even put them in the same category.
And the closest thing I could think of is like mummies, but that's
But even then,
yeah, it's not American.
I do, something I guess we haven't really talked about or whatever, but just the idea of movies in the 60s or so, the playing with radiation, right? That's something that even in 64, it was Doctor Strangelove, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that has the nuclear bomb. You have Godzilla, which comes from basically the Hiroshima and
Radiation was scary, man.
yeah.
There's a Cold War going on.
Well, because then they also talked about the nuclear plants were like great energy, like this energy will live forever, right? Before they were like, but there's a whole lot of nuclear waste. So interesting also to, it's not really focused on because there's so much more of the social and civil construct that they focus on. But just the idea of radiation was such a big thing, in the 60s at that point of just like, this is going to be the future, and I guess today it's 5G networks. So I don't know. There's something to it.
I mean, we're always going to be scared of the unknown, especially when we don't know the full replications of like certain technologies. Anyways, so I think that was interesting that you brought that up because that was such a huge like national cultural fear during the time, and I feel like that's like how writers tended to use that in a way.
Because it was also the Cold War, right? Like that was like to us maybe back then that played more of a right? To us, it's this already in the history, radiation is like it's freaking everywhere. We have a microwave, and that's back then that was crazy to think of. So.
Maybe you should come back and send that.
I don't think so. Well, is there anything else that we want to talk about? Do you want to do final thoughts or?
I think final thoughts, right?
Let's do some final thoughts.
Let's do some final thoughts.
Final thoughts, baby.
Woo. So I guess
you wanna go first before we lose you again?
Yes.
Sure. I'll go first. My final thought is, if you don't want to be a zombie, man, just get burnt. Just get burned. You know what I'm saying? No, this movie is, like I said, the first, unless you're like a super zombie person like Michaela, but if you're like a regular dude like me that just casually watches movies, the first 10 to 15 minutes might be a little rough. But after you get through that, you get through the meat and potatoes of the movie. And it actually gets really interesting and it becomes way less about the zombies. Like, I know that's like a big issue or problem, but it's really about the whole internal issue and the relationship between people and how all these strange people have to come together, but at the same time, they're like playing games against each other. And that's kind of like what Dino was saying earlier. Like, it's basically like what's happening today in America in a way. And in a way, like, this gives like a little glimpse of what's going on even today, even though this movie was made how many years ago? 60, 80?
68.
I don't even.
It was made like
6
52 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, man. It's insane, like how many movies we've seen from like from the Great Dictator to like stuff like this. Like there's so many movies that are so old and still years later are so relatable to today. So definitely a recommend.
Yeah, and sadly are still relatable, right?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, definitely recommend. 2 thumbs up. I enjoyed the movie. I love, like, I have a big passion for black and white movies,
Mhm.
especially if they're as good as this one. So that's my final thought.
All right, I'll go because yeah, it was my first time watching it. You know, it's a 1968 movie. It's kind of rough around the edges if you're looking at it on film and some of the acting dialogue stuff. But just piggyback also on Steve said, it's still very relevant with the themes that they explore in the movie. So I would recommend it. It's one that I would totally watch maybe 5, 10 years from now and see how it, it relates to where we are there in time in the future. So I really enjoyed it. I didn't grow up watching or liking horror films and stuff like that. So I've gotten more into it as of late, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
It's funny because like it's one of the few movies that I actually do not mind rewatching. There's a few films I even like, I don't really like to rewatch, or I have to be in a certain mood to rewatch it. But I feel like every time I saw this movie again, I was like, okay, yeah, let's see it. Like it's just a good rewatchable movie. The story is very relatable to like everyone, because like you literally just see like this average normal day people dealing with some pretty extreme bullshit, but in a very realistic way. You know, like you don't mind that some of the zombies kind of are wonky looking. You don't mind that there's literally one zombie. I think it's a producer's aunt, and like she has no makeup on. She's just in a white nightie walking around. Like you actually see her frontal, like her face, and it's like she's not wearing any makeup on. She's not even doing like a face. She's just doing this. She's walking. She's having a good old time. You know, this fucking aunt who's like, I'm gonna fucking help my nephew achieve their dream. So props on her. But
Sure.
but yeah, like it's like yeah, the end still bums me the fuck out, like so terribly so. But like it's overall like it's weird. Like it's a pioneer in its particular niche. It's a horror classic. It's straight up an independent movie.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's a black and white. I mean, I wish that we talked about the visual of the black and white, because as much as I hate how like it's literally a black and white movie. There is no gray. It's either very dark or the white is fucking blinding.
Mm-hmm.
But like that doesn't bother me at all. Like for me, like it's almost a part of the movie.
Yeah.
Like it's so consistent with that, where I feel like okay, maybe that was done intentionally. Not that they didn't know how to film in black and white,
Mm-hmm.
but like just everything in general. Like it's good. It's weird because I feel like if it was just a few notches lower or just skewed a bit, it'd be a fucking mess. But everything is just done to a key and to like just the right point that the whole movie just works. So like it's a very good movie as a whole. And yeah, I definitely I really do like it. I don't even like horror movies, but I like this one.
Jason?
I would call this a horror movie with a brain, because it really does make you think. And those pop up every once in a while. And when they're executed, even with a low budget like this one, like they kind of do something for us socially, which is great. I think movies like this kind of move the social fabric in America that much further, because everybody kind of sees a piece of themselves in it, or they see someone that they know in it. And it's like, but this is the fabric of America. We're all different. We all have different ideas, but we got to find a way to survive together. There was something I noticed this time watching the movie that I had never noticed before. I mentioned it to Dino, the American flag in the very beginning of the movie. It's the second shot of the whole movie. the director wants you to know right away that this is an American story. Like, this is America. And that's brilliant too. It's like, you may not catch that the first or second time you see it, because this is probably my 6th time seeing this movie. So I have seen it at every like block of my life, maybe even more than 6. And I've seen different iterations of it. I would recommend, if this ending bums you guys out, I would recommend watching the one from the 90s. Almost the same exact story, almost exactly shot for shot, except it's a more modern look, totally different ending. And it's oddly a little bit more satisfying. It's still dark and dirty, and you're like, oh, but it's a little bit more satisfying than this one for some. You'll know why if you haven't seen it or if you want to watch it. But it's a good movie. And you're like, okay, I get it now. Still a social message, just one more indicative of the 90s, right? Well, I won't ruin anything in case you guys want to watch it, but I do recommend it. So this movie is great to me because it's very rare in society that we see a new monster introduced into like the lexicon of monsters. Like you guys mentioned Frankenstein and Dracula and the Mummy and the Gila monster, or the swamp creature, whatever that one is, Lagoon, Black from the Black Lagoon. There's iconic monsters. There's Freddy, Jason, but then all of a sudden there's zombie. But it can't just be one zombie. It's got to be a bunch of zombies, and then it creates its own monster situation.
Because they're so slow. Imagine if there was like, Dracula or Frankenstein, right? Although Frankenstein's pretty slow, but like just one zombie the whole movie, like that would, it's the power of many, right? Like you get overwhelmed.
But that's the monster, right?
It was reversed, a bunch of like a million fucking Freddy Kruegers. It's like, nightmare, bitch! Nightmare, bitch!
It's over. Freddie Williams, like night 1 or 2, it's over. The whole night 1 or 2. That'd be a wrap. 2 nights, all of humanity would be wiped out if there's a million Freddys. Freddie would be working overtime. He would be like doing 3-4 dreams a night.
Oh God!
Here's your melatonin, bitch!
Yeah, Scary Terry. I think though, the movie, like I said, does change every time I watch it. It's like a new age. I will watch it probably forever. It's probably one of the movies that made me want to get into movies because I'm like, oh, this is different. It might have been the first independent film I've ever saw, where it's like, oh, this isn't in the Hollywood system. Something different's happening right now. Yeah, no, it's a cult classic. I've seen it in theaters 2 years ago for the 50th anniversary. That's where I got this T-shirt from because I had to see it on, the big screen. It was a real old theater from like the 20s or 30s. I'll say this and then I'll leave you guys alone. George Romero's assistant came to the movie to do a talk back of the movie, and he was telling us stories about George Romero and what happened when they were making this movie, and what some of the intentions were, and how these movies were made, because like it was a B movie, so it was shown throughout the South of America because that's where the drive-ins and stuff were, and then the movie just kind of caught wildfire. So I don't know if George Romero knew it or not. That was a question I would have asked. Knowing this is going to play like the drive-in circuit down south, and you made the black guy the lead? Who is this message for? A bunch of hillbillies killing, zombies and a black guy in the middle of nowhere. Who is this for?
Well, that's what sometimes is the best, right? Like people that need to see the message or hear the message don't realize it, but will watch it because it's entertaining.
You know why they wouldn't have watched it though? If there was a black guy as the logo of Night of the Living Dead, because he's the lead. He probably should have been. I want to find a T-shirt. Well, I guess the zombies are sort of the lead too. They are the monster, but the black guy is the But they would never advertise a poster with him on it.
Duane's definitely the heart and soul of this.
Yeah, but I think that's super cool too. So those are my final thoughts about the movie. Yeah.
All right. So I'll cap this off. I think that this is as American as a movie should be. It's literally a bunch of people who wanted to get together and create something special, and they did. They had like a whole bunch of different setbacks. They didn't even know if they were going to finish it. And they ended up creating something that was not only indicative of their time, but they created something that's really going to be special for years to come. Like, it's a cautionary tale that everyone should see. And I think this is a very important piece of our culture that should be celebrated as long as people are willing to celebrate it.
I agree.
Amen.
Well said.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's up, Des? Who is our next pick and what's our next movie?
Next pick is Mr. Barney's turn, aka Don Dino. So Don Dino, what you got cooking for us next week?
I picked Ya no estoy aquí. I'm no longer here, and it's a movie on Netflix. I picked it because I had seen the trailer at some point, but then I also saw kind of a talk between Guillermo del Toro and Cuarón, and they're talking about the movie in Spanish, because and it's a movie in Monterrey, Mexico. And yeah, they were kind of talking about it, and just them talk. I even stopped watching the talk back between them because I was like, oh, I just gotta go watch it. I don't want them to give anything away, but just the way they were talking about it, I'm just like, all right, sold. So I haven't seen the movie, and yeah, we'll check it out next week.
So next week, I'm no longer here. And maybe I'm no longer here next week. So you got to tune in to find out. And yeah, for Michaela, JP, El Dondino, Jason Echols, and me, Steve, we'll catch you next week.
Ciao.
Bye.
Mucho. Oye, dímelo, amor.
Thank you for watching Oye Dímelo Network. Click here for additional videos, and don't forget to subscribe. The lonely singles in your neighborhood already did.